Good morning and welcome to Trust Talks episode 7, where we speak to the most innovative and creative minds in the space. My name is Pav. I'm going to be your host for today, and we are joined with Sammy from Trust Wallet, Danny from Hype, where we are discussing Web3 branding. Massive topic in the space. Pleasure to have you both on. Let's head over to Danny first for a quick introduction from yourself. Then we'll speak to our very own Sammy as well. So Danny, how are you, buddy?
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I'm good. Nice to be here.
Yeah, pleasure to have you on the show today. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your role over at Hype before we get into the chat.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Danny, managing director at Hype. For those that don't know, Hype, we are the largest global crypto marketing agency. We've been since 2017 running with hundreds and hundreds of crypto projects from early stage seed round all the way through to some of the biggest projects you'll know and have heard of today. My background has been marketing and agencies branding for the last sort of 12, 13 years. So that's me.
Wow, incredible. Yeah, I didn't actually know how big Hype was until I'd done some research before the show today. So really excited about that. I mean, great work. You guys have been working on some really cool stuff as well. So thank you for joining. Sammy, give us an introduction on yourself and what you do at Trust Wallet, and then we'll get straight into it.
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Sammy from Trust Wallet, currently operating as a head of marketing here at Trust Wallet. For those ones who haven't managed to say hello to me from our community, being at Trust Wallet already actually more than 2 years. It's going to be actually right now, it's 25th month going right now. A bit of about my background. Always been operating in hypergrowth environment. I started at the mobile gaming. If some of you were slingshotting Angry Birds on your phone, I was there launching operations at cities, at Uber, and then jumped into crypto in the past few years. So great to be here. I think, what do you think, Pav? I think the audience doesn't really need much of an introduction of Trust Wallet, but maybe we need to remind that we are about to hit our 200 million downloads any moment now. So you can see the countdown in our X handle. First of all, great to be here, Pav and Danny. I think it's the bar is pretty high. No, it was CC who was in the previous episode, so let's make it at least as cool as the previous one.
Yeah, definitely. No, look, I'm really excited about this conversation. It's always about the panel, and we always bring the best guests who are building in the most effective and influential way in the space. So really excited. We're going to be covering marketing do's and don'ts in Web3. Really big conversation. You know, Web2 strategies, if they translate into Web3, what does that look like in terms of a successful strategy? What can we pick up and learn, and what is being driven forward in terms of innovation that we're not seeing in Web2 that you can leverage off a community to build in Web3? And we're going to talk about sticky users. You know, this is all about retention. It's about market share. It's about mind share. And we're going to discuss with you guys what your thoughts are on that. How can projects who are listening today, or anyone who's in the space, look at it from the perspective of retention and you know, really garnering your own piece of the pie and maintaining that with so much competition that's out there. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is Trust Talks number 7. We're here on a weekly basis speaking to innovative and really cool people in the space and having these conversations that are driving the space forward. So let's head over to you, Danny. I want to go straight into it in terms of what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen a brand do when they're trying to market in Web3? This is a really big topic, and I'd love to get your overview of that.
Yeah, I mean, where to start? I think that the biggest mistake is, and yeah, I see this all the time. We get this with loads of projects that come to us. It's just a consistent thing. It's been for as far as I can remember. Is that I think people really believe they can build like a genuine loyal community in like a month or two. Like genuinely, people come and like, hey, you know, my TG's in a couple of months, so we're going to start like marketing now, and we're just going to grow a community, and it's going to be amazing, and everyone's going to love us. And I think that's like just such a ridiculous thought when you really think about it. But just a lot of projects confuse short-term hype with actual loyalty. And like, yeah, you can do giveaways, and you can have a busy Discord, and you can have a bunch of social following, but that's not necessarily a real community. That happens, that's built over time. And it's funny because I think if you like in traditional marketing, right, we've got years and decades of data that kind of shows people form emotional bonds with brands, where they have long-term connections, but it just doesn't happen overnight. And so it's kind of wild that people think that will just happen here because, I don't know, there's a token or there's some financial upside. It's the same principle, the same thing. And whatever you look at, any of the really strong communities in the space, right? When you really dive into where they came from and how they came to be, whether it's a bearer chain or whatever, right? These guys have been doing it for years. This isn't like just turned it around in a couple of months. So yeah, I think misjudging short-term hype for actual loyalty is probably the biggest mistake that I see made.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm glad you touched on the conversation of a Discord or even a Telegram. You know, 1,000 members in the Discord and the Telegram automatically, you know, someone equates to a community, and it really doesn't. There's so much more that's required, and there's so much more that comes from having a group of people that believe in your product and have done and love your product over a period of time and have seen that growth and been part of that curve, which, you know, you can't compare it. You just can't. And it's a really great point. Sammy, I wanted to bring you in on that as well, just in terms of, are there any big mistakes or pitfalls that you're sort of thinking you want to avoid when building a community or marketing in Web3?
Yeah, well, I would actually echo still a bit Danny first. So first of all, like Danny put it really well, community is the key. So let's put it, I usually want to use this, or what we use internally is, you know, the frameworks. Like in Web2, we use 2C framework, content and channel. But in Web3, you have content, channel, you have community. I think there the biggest mistake is that especially marketers oftentimes they are like, okay, I'm just made or hired here to do marketing. It's all about just social content. But really it goes all about, you know, making sure that you have that community, like Danny mentioned. And as marketers, you need to be working with the community. Make sure that you have those product feedback loops. Make sure that you have strong iteration. You listen which features they want, what they like the most, what they don't like the most. Because usually the community is the key to really assess the pre-product market fit. And marketers, you know, in my mind, they need to be extension of, you know, everything that the organization is building. And that's what we also do here at Trust Wallet. We are really engaged in communities. We listen what community really cares about, you know, and that's the way to, you know, be building the long-term value creating successful processes. So
Yeah,
maybe that's a way to put it.
Yeah, it's a great point, and especially with how valuable that insight can be, right? When you have a group of people that really intimately understand your product or your service or believe in your NFT project or are there for the liquidity of your coin, listening to those people, I've heard time and time again from founders, you know, from speaking to founders over the last 2 years, hundreds of founders, you know, the ones that really engage with their community, listen to the feedback, and you get the extremes, right? You get some projects who are completely community led, and you see how that forms into a DAO structure, and you get others that completely isolate the community and they build out new products, or they bring out new things in the project and they get completely alienated. And I think it's a massive thing where you listen to your community of what it is that they want, and then you align that with your goals and visions as well. And I think that's what ultimately leads to a successful community and project relationship. Speaking about Web2, Sammy, I know I wanted to ask this question because of how different marketing and branding can be in Web2 and Web3. And I wanted to just highlight that. In Web2, paid traffic and ads, they work, right? In Web3, it's more of a focus on community. How do you recommend brands build trust before they even launch? Let's talk about prior to that. You know, this is the initial phase or stages. How are you building trust, and how are you building that prior to a launch in your eyes?
Well, I could say that the key is obviously like we already been speaking about, community is the key, but you need to show that you're there for the long term, that you're not just going to, you know, run a project for the short-term gains. Like we at Trust Wallet, we see ourselves as missionaries rather than mercenaries. So show who you are, what's your storyline, what's your end game, and be fully honest about, you know, what's your objective, which products you are building. So build that relationship through education and transparency. So I would say that, and again, it goes back to the, you know, make sure that you are able to leverage the community by building the product market fit. So I think that's already, you know, a really solid starting point. Maybe I could even take an example here, you know, maybe not relevant for most of the users, but for example, in this cycle, I have seen that Hyperliquid has been doing this really well. even before, anyone knew about their token or airdrop, there was a tight community, who was really using the product just because they knew who were the people, who were the founders, what's their mission, and they basically just wanted to improve the product that they really enjoyed for the purpose. So I would say, get them on board, show who you are, and be there for the long term. I would say that's the way to be in the game, not only on this cycle but multiple to come.
I think it depends if you've got product market fit a little bit as well, right? Because Hyperliquid, it's a lot easier for them to build a community of people that are bullish on them and what they're doing, because they're actually using the thing and it's good and they've used it for ages. And so they're using it regardless of the token. That's a very different go-to-market. It's a very different situation to, let's be honest, like the majority of other projects or pre-token launch projects. So yeah, I think that the thing for me about, we talk a lot about community, right? But what is community? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what is a community? I try and think about it that there's like three core things that I think, particularly in crypto, we're able to do that means we can create a strong community. There's like a shared belief system, right? We all believe that this thing is the next Amazon. We all believe this token's going to go up. We all believe that this is going to create financial sovereignty, whatever, right? That we have a shared belief, and that all comes from the branding and the positioning and narratives and all the work, the vision that you've done as a brand to sort of convince people and show people what you're building. So if you have a shared belief system, the thing that we can do in this space that maybe you can't in others is, I think, much more about contribution. So a bit like an open source movement, right? It's not just, I've got a community, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to tell you that, and I'm going to ask you to do this. It's very much like they're contributing. And the more you can get people contributing within your ecosystem, within what you do, the more accountability they have, the more they feel like an emotional attachment to what they're doing. So, you've got product roadmap. Just don't put it out there and say, hey, here's our product roadmap. Put it out there and say, hey, what do you guys think? Like, we're thinking of going this direction or this direction. What would you guys do? What do you want to see? And actually, the people that then come back and are contributing to that, when you then go in that direction, there's this accountability element that they have that just brings a closer tie. So I think if you have shared beliefs and you have this contribution, then that's when you can start to build culture. Because culture, inside jokes, language, rituals, like the Henlos, the Gomonads, the Ooga Boogers, these things are like come organically out of community once people have this shared belief and they feel part of something. So I think regardless of who you are, whether you're product market fit or not, whatever stage, anyone can fundamentally think about building a community with these concepts. But the problem is most people just don't. And most people just think, oh, I'm just going to focus on growth and like growing my social numbers, growing my Discord numbers, hitting some numbers so Binance list me, I don't know, whatever, rather than thinking, actually, how do I build a community?
Yeah, you mentioned so much there, and I completely agree with all of it. One of the things I wanted to touch on was emotional attachment, and I think you see that in Web3 coupled with a financial attachment or financial incentive, which you don't see in Web2. Something I can think of, let's say your favorite band or your favorite sports team is great, but if you have an NFT collection and it's your favorite artwork, but you've also spent 3 ETH on the floor, you have not only what you mentioned there, an emotional attachment, but a financial attachment. How do you feel projects navigate that? I've heard so many founders say, in other businesses, I haven't had 10,000 people on a Discord screaming and shouting for a direction before at 3 o'clock in the morning, whereas now I have. And I've heard it's the hardest thing you could ever do from many founders. What's your thoughts on that? Like, how do projects handle that level of intensity due to a financial attachment and an emotional one?
Honestly, it's tough. Like, if you've ever run a business before and you've had to, I don't know, report into shareholders, right? And let's say you've got a board of shareholders that's like 4 or 5. That's hard enough because they're all asking you stuff. Now you've got a board of directors that's 10,000 strong, right? Everyone is bought in, and that is pretty wild and pretty tough to manage. But it's just about transparency. It's about open communication, and it starts from the top and it starts from the beginning. You can't sort of get to that point if you've got all the way through to a TGE and an airdrop or whatever you've ended up doing, and only now like people are starting to find out more about what's happening or what your plans are, what your vision is. It's too late. You've kind of missed the boat. Right? A lot of people make the mistake, I think, that I see this all the time. I probably could have been the other answer to the first question, which is that a lot of people think TGE is like the end, right? So all the work, all the stuff that's happened, all the launches, all the money spent, all the marketing, is like everyone's leading up to this moment. It's like, oh, I'm going to TGE. It's like the birth of your child. This is the moment. The birth of your child is not the end. That's the beginning. The rest of your life now, where you've actually got to grow this thing and build it and feed it. And, so I think that's another big mistake that everyone makes. And so when they get there and that happens, they then wonder why everyone leaves or everyone dumps, or people aren't interested or bought into the long term. It's because you haven't been yourself. You haven't even thought what's happening 3 days after that TG, let alone what the long term vision is here. So I think it's harder when you've got a lot of stakeholders and you have to be transparent. But if you have a proper narrative, a proper vision, you build a proper brand, you're building a proper product, and you haven't just sort of attracted a bunch of mercenary capital that's going to disappear regardless of what you do, then you've got a shot. But it's hard.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's incredibly difficult, especially, and you touched on this a couple of minutes ago, so just about a playbook. There isn't necessarily a playbook out here, right? So a lot of these projects may even not have been in business before. I've seen that with founders where Web3 is their first business, or you do see ones that have been successful in Web2 and they're now experiencing challenges and experiences that are completely alien to them in Web3 because of the nature of the growth and the nature of holders or people that you're accountable to. And I think authenticity really plays a really strong role here. It does in any marketing or branding campaign, but talk me through how brands can avoid looking like cash grabs when you've got so many people who have been rugged, scammed, or lost money in the space. How much of that should that be at a project's forefront in their mind in how they brand and market?
I mean, I feel like if you're in the space and you've been in the space long enough, I think you spot these things a mile off, right? We all have our sort of red flag list, and you just know, you get a feeling, you see something, you're like, no, that there's no way this is legit. And so there's something to be said about being locked into the space and really getting it and knowing it. That's one side of it. But I think in terms of the brand themselves, there's authenticity is the answer, right? How do you build authenticity? Because that's how you avoid looking like you're some kind of scam. And we've seen a huge rise in founder branding. That's been a big narrative. Over in Denver last week, there was loads and loads of talk about how do founders get their voice? How do they, help elevate the brand? And is Tesla the best electric car in the world? Probably not. But is Elon the most famous man in the world? Yeah, right. So I think founders have a huge impact on the trust and the growth of the protocol or the project, because you trust that they're going to turn it into something big. So that's one side of it, is like the team. And I think people like Eclipse, for example, did a fantastic job where they didn't just have a founder, their entire team sort of collectively were really, really strong pushing. And so there's examples of that, which helps. And then I think on the flip side, as an actual branding, I think is more important today than it ever has been. I remember a few years ago, last cycles, and people just didn't care. Right? People had like these crappy websites. It really didn't matter. Like, people were just like, is the tokenomics good? Is there a flywheel? Is this thing going to go up? Cool. I'm in. Whereas I think more and more now, particularly as we onboard a broader audience, as we look to expand crypto into the mainstream eventually, hopefully, it's going to be more and more important that we actually look legit. And like that's it's a real usable website. And if you look at Avaro, or you look at what the rebrand they did, or any of the OG protocols, I think they've really started to get that and started to realize, okay, brand is important, and how we look and come across and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Sammy, I wanted to come over to you just to get your thoughts as well. Obviously, the head of marketing, you're on Trust Talks at the moment. You're conscious of that as well. How do you think, authenticity and, like Danny mentioned, their team presence online, how much value do you think that adds?
I think it's really critical. So, for example, most of our team leads are already participating in all of the activities on online, offline. I think we just want to show up as a people, like who are the people building behind the scenes. We are fully docs, so to say, so we have nothing to hide. And I think that's the key. Like, we believe that to become and be the #1 self-custody wallet, we need to show that we really stand behind our product and we can be publicly speaking what we are doing. So I believe so that it's all about, the people behind the scenes. We have put together a vision and strategy, and then it's, demonstration on that week in, week out, day in, day out, having the conversation with your core community, with public overall. So like I said, authenticity comes from who you are, and make sure that you have those dialogues. But end of the day, it's what you commit to execute. So also as an organization, it's like, which product you do, are you going to ship what you're committed to do, and stick to the plan? So I would say that's the best demonstration. End of the day, the product is the thing that is speaking behalf of whether it is marketing or whatever product or engineering efforts.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Sammy, while we're on that topic, you know, one of the big questions which I've seen or has been posed is, you know, can you use the same Web2 marketing playbook in Web3? So, you know, a lot of Web3 projects rely on hype and FOMO. Do you think this approach has a long-term future, or, you know, will sustainable brands take a different path? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think usually people are speaking about, you know, which one to prioritize, mind share or market share, or is it brand or growth? Usually the hype in my mind is it's fine, like it's the way to get the traction and the interest, but well, and even in this cycle, you could say like sometimes even the hype can be seen as a negative thing. I would say it's good if it's justified. Danny just said that long term, if there's a utility, there's a use case, then it's completely fine. You can build the hype and you will get the users. That's the way to get the users. That's the onboarding part or the acquisition part. Then the actual utility and the value will be described whether there's actually, well, the retention will tell if it's actually a legit. So I'm usually one of those marketers who are saying, you know, build the mindshare that whenever users actually are, you know, for example, choosing their first self-custody wallet or whatever the use case is, they can trust you. They take the action, but I would be a bit balanced, you know, not over-indexing on creating imagination on something that then users will fall disappointed on. So I would say try to build consistency, and that's the key for the long term. That's how I would say.
Yeah, I think a similar theme to your answer to your previous question. It's, you know, have a strong foundation, be clear on your longevity and what you're planning to build and how you're planning to build that, and then show up and be consistent every single day, right? Nothing shows trust and authenticity like someone who's consistent and shows up. So really strong point. Danny, I wanted to ask you a question just before we move on to retention and sticky users as a term due to lack of a better one. What are some Web2 strategies that translate well into Web3? And what do you think should be left behind? What's just not working and, you know, isn't working in this online fast-paced environment?
Maybe I'm biased. I think like marketing is marketing, right? And actual real marketing is mostly psychology, behavior of people. Like there's loads of things that actually, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, like marketing fundamentals still matter. And so I hear this a lot. A lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, in crypto we don't do this, but in Web2 we do. So, well, actually, have you tried doing that in crypto? Because actually that is a fundamentally strong marketing tactic, but you know, whatever that might be. So I think like, yeah, brand storytelling, community-driven narratives, yeah, of course, that happens. You know, look at Apple, look at Nike, right? They do a fantastic job of that, and projects in crypto should do the same thing. I think using like KOLs, we call it influencer marketing, huge in Web2, right? And we use it as well. So I think there's a number of things that will always apply, because it's just how you promote, you know, product, whatever it is you promote. I think what's really interesting about our space is this element of contribution that I talked about, right? So there's like this shared element of, you know, whereas, I don't know, Nike or whoever, Apple, whatever, like you don't own any of that. You're not part of it. And here you've got an audience and consumers who potentially own part of what you're building and have a say on it, have an opinion on it. And that's very, very different. That's why community becomes such a big thing, because actually they're so involved. But yeah, I think there's loads and loads, you know, almost everything you do in Web2 marketing, arguably, you could bring over. There are some things we're quite ahead of, and there's some things we're quite behind on. Like I spent before crypto, I used to spend quite a lot of time in performance marketing agency, and we would do a lot of like really like lower funnel. You know, it was all about lifetime value. It was all about ROI. It was all around like CAC and how much is it costing per, you know, percent to get this user. You don't see a lot of that in crypto, and actually the reality is with wallets and you know, blockchain data, actually you could do that kind of stuff. And there are some really phenomenal tools out there, attribution on marketing data that people just aren't using today, that they should be using, that would significantly improve a bunch of stuff, be it retention, user base, whatever it is.
Yeah, I wanted to come on to retention. Some great points there. And I think one of the things I wanted to just touch on was the KOLs, the use of key opinion leaders or influencers in Web 2 versus Web 3. And we won't go into it, but I just wanted to just highlight the implications of KOLs in Web3 who have rugged or who have scammed. It gives general influencers a lot of stick, people who are actually building, and you don't necessarily see that in Web2. So, if you've got an Instagram account and you use an influencer to shill your product, because there's not that financial incentive behind it and their audience can either buy the product or not, and it's very arbitrary in black and white, you don't generally get that stigma of influencers where you do in Web3. So, very something I think like projects need to be very careful with, and I think a lot of people are because of how bad that stigma is. Let's head over to retention and gaining users and maintaining retention. I think that's a massive conversation in Web3, one that we're very proud of at Trust Wallet. So, Sammy, talk to me about an underrated retention strategy that Web3 brands should be using, but they aren't. What's one thing that just sticks out for you immediately?
Yeah, I think easily marketers will jump into tactics like, okay, if you're a wallet, make sure to do app pushes and do this or that. Make sure to run AMAs, or like we can actually discuss about. They are actually very good tactics, but I think end of the day, what I have seen is that no matter whether it is a bear or bull market, just be relevant. Like I think Trust Wallet is obviously a good product to use. In all of the market conditions for self-custody. No matter bear or bull, you can natively swap, you can stake. So I have seen that end of the day, if you can do activities that really make sure that you are in the mindshare, so users are thinking about that, okay, it's there, it's still there. You're going to be in the game for the long term. But then it comes into the tactics as well. How to really make sure that users use it for the purpose that they are really supposed to do. So obviously, in Web3, the biggest challenge is onboarding. Like in this cycle, we have seen that meme coins are pulling in the retails, and they have been pulling them earlier in the cycle as well. So now the education is really key. As a marketers, I want to say that you can do a lot of activities. You can run content in Web2 channels, which I, by the way, still feel like many of the marketers are not doing because it's not necessarily cool enough. So they like to go to X, double down there, do Discord activities. But I think you need to be everywhere. You need to be in those SEO channels, get your articles indexed in the Google algorithm. You need to be in the Web3 events as well to really show that what you are innovating and create the mind share. But I think end of the day, it's just, honestly, whether it's like tactics relevant for you or not, like do those things that really are suitable in that market condition. And like I would like to even say that this Trust Talks is one of those things. Give some alpha, give some insights, and try to find that niche that really creates the value, whether it's through product or secondary use cases. I think that's end of the day. Value creation goes a long way around.
That's a really strong point. I hadn't actually thought of it like that, and I couldn't agree more. Like the value add needs to be more than just an amazing product. You need to have articles. You need to have secondary things that support and give people more of an insight and support existing customers, that appeal to new customers, and having that well-rounded thought process really starts attracting all of those categories. Something we've spoken about offline as well. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's there's so much more that you can do, and framing it in a way of what's happening in a bull market, what are the activities we can do now, what's happening in a bear market, what can we do, and then what can we do consistently throughout that's going to attract people irrespective of market conditions. Danny,
final addition there maybe is that I want to say like marketers should be, well, everyone in the organization of Web3 should be really attuned into the market, like what's going on. But like I just want to highlight that as a marketer, you're in the community, you see what's going on in the industry, and it's their responsibility also feed in to the rest of the organization. Like, hey, okay, what's hot? What's the narrative? Are we able to capture it, or what product we should be building, or if we should be pivoting? So that's just one additional caveat.
Yeah, it all contributes to the word mindshare, doesn't it? It's how are you dominating or attracting or achieving mindshare when the market may not be in the right place, or the sentiment might not be there. But how do you still manage to do that? And I'm very proud of what we're doing with Trust Talks here as well, because I think we're doing that in a really powerful way. Danny, was there anything you wanted to just touch on there before we go into just a little bit about retention?
No, I think it's what you said. Like, it summarizes, give people a reason to stay. That it's just not incentives.
Yeah.
that's it. And
Summary, yeah.
Ultimately, we have to build something here. Like, you can promise and promise and promise, but at some point you got to deliver a product, and it's got to work, and people have got to be able to use it. Otherwise, don't be surprised when they leave.
Yeah, really good point. Just a follow up on that, Danny, and Sammy, feel free to jump in straight after if there's anything you wanted to add. We know retention's tough, right? We know with how fast the timeline moves, and with how fast growth is, and how sentiment changes. What do you think the secret is to keeping users engaged? Is there anything that you would advise once the hype dies down, or or are you still sort of in that discovery space yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a silver bullet for that. I don't know the answer, but I think the actual question is why is that happening? Why is retention bad? And it goes back to some of the earlier points, which is, I think a lot of the marketing that is done, or a lot of what happens in the space, attracts mercenary capital, and mercenary capital is never going to be retained no matter what you do, because they're not there to be retained. So it all starts with who you're attracting in the first place. And it goes back to one of the biggest frustrations I have constantly, and we all have, is when a project comes to us and they've got, maybe it's a small but pretty strong core community. Maybe they've got 10,000 followers, and they've got like a decent Discord, and they've actually been building for a while, and they've got a serious thing. And then they come to us and say, oh, we want to launch on a centralized exchange, so we need 300,000 followers. So can you go get them for us? And it just is so frustrating, because you're like, well, obviously you can buy them tomorrow. Like, of course you could get 300,000 followers, but they're not a community. They're not going to stay. There's no retention there. So if you do that and then wonder why have I not been able to retain these 300,000 people after, well, what do you think? Like, look how you acquired them. So I think the question is in how you acquire the consumers in the first place, and the community that you build. And that's the most important thing. And then, yeah, it's everything that we talked about, giving them a reason to stay, having a good product, actually delivering on the promises that you've made, and having them feel part of something, like building that community spirit, as we said. All of those things, if you tick all those boxes, the right people will stay.
Yeah, not to be a Debbie Downer, but it's an incredibly difficult industry to do this in, because you have the price of Bitcoin fluctuating between 10 and 15%, and unfortunately, sentiment goes with it. When you see, you can see that on the timeline itself. You can see that on engagement numbers. You can see that on retention numbers. You can see that on daily active users, and you can even see it with liquidity on chain, and how much it changes because BTC is down and how BTC is up. And I have to commend projects and companies like yourself who understand that and really ride the wave of that. Touching on what Sammy said in being consistent in a market that isn't, and being that one consistent activity when volatility is probably highest amongst anything in TradFi, you really have to weather the storm, and you really have to be there, because it is the storm and it is going to be choppy. So something to think about.
Token go up is like the best marketing there is, right, in crypto.
That's
it. So if you can make token go up, you get everything else is better for it. And I think we see that as well, right? In an up market, when everything is booming, everything's doing well, even a very average sort of marketing campaigns and stuff will do better than in a down market. Or over the last bear market, we did some really fantastic launches and some awesome campaigns, which some of them did well, some of them did fine. But honestly, if we'd done them in a bull market, it probably would have done 10, 100x better, just because the market's booming and there's more people in it and there's more excitement and people are looking for things. So yeah, you have to completely address like where you are in the market. And I think this is why people are really struggling now, because this market's just so bonkers that no one knows even where they are. Are they up? Are they down? Are they? What is even going on? So I think there's this. That's why a lot of projects are really struggling right now, in particular, because the market has such a big impact on it.
I like Danny's comment that the token or the price is the best marketing. That's completely true here. But I want to actually I'm obviously focusing on this from the wallet point of view since we are from Trust Wallet. But I want to also spin it other way around. Trust Wallet, we have been doing a lot of improvements on our product experience. And the reality is that, for example, the Solana experience could have been better. We are doing a lot of improvements recently. The thing here is that we necessarily didn't get all of the momentum that we actually really wanted. Did we FOMO on that one? Yeah, of course we did. On the other hand, I want to say also that we did also the right things because we didn't allow users to do exactly the mercenaries. So they maybe did those activities elsewhere. But now in the past few weeks, unfortunately, the market is, you could say, maybe slowing down a bit, or maybe it's waiting for the next narrative or the next momentum upwards. But we do see that when the true users who really believe in the industry, that's also the moment we see a lot of aggregation. So we use a third-party platforms like Sensor Tower, and we see that although this cycle has been super competitive, we know that we are the home base for most of the users. So in these moments, we actually see that the traffic is consolidating back to Trust Wallet, and now that's actually us an opportunity to actually launch those new features, which are coming in the coming few weeks. Anyone listening here, we have some interesting insights here to already coming in the coming weeks, which you might have seen in the vision statement from our CEO. So what I want to say here is that once we get them back, this is the best moment to also market to our existing audience and show that we have value for them, whatever they want. Is it about trading? Is it about some earn opportunities in the future? Or maybe it's one of those daily life opportunities. So end of the day, I'm not super worried about is it bull or bear. In bull market, everything's funnier, like nicer. The crypto Twitter feed in X is much, you could say, energizing, so to say. But end of the day, I see like both of those cycle moments have opportunity, and we are building products for both of those. So that's something I feel actually pretty excited, no matter where the market is headed at this point.
Yeah, I love that. Sorry, go for it, Danny.
Just going to say, talking of Bitcoin pricing, but I was just trying to find it now. That there's a really good research piece I saw probably about 6 months ago now, and they've done a whole load of analysis on token launches based on Bitcoin price the week before. And I can't remember exactly. I have to fish it out and find it, but it was effectively saying that if the token price is going up for the 7 days before launch, almost every single time the launch does well. And when the token price was going down for 7 days before launch, almost every single time the token went down. And so fundamentally, particularly if you're launching a token, there are some really important market factors you have to consider. But I think what your point, Sammy, when it's product based, so wallets are different in my mind because wallets have a product market fit. There's a lot of value that is brought, all the user base. That it's very different to maybe a DeFi protocol or lending and borrowing or an L1 or a GoChain L2 or whatever. They're all different, but you can't help but be affected by the market. Unfortunately, that's one of the other nuances of crypto that makes it just that much more challenging.
Yeah, Sammy, was there anything you wanted to touch on there just before we move on?
No, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, well, I mean, switching the conversation to growth tactics. So now, we're discussing in the context of an established project who's weathered the storms, understands the nuances that you're referring to there, Danny, and has beaten that volatility. Sammy, with attention spans shrinking and the amount of competition that's rising, what would you say is the best way to break through the noise in Web3? Because there's a lot of it, right? And in and amongst those things that I mentioned, but what's your sort of first few things that come to your mind?
Yeah, I think there's two things. The first one is over communication, as much as I wouldn't like to do that, but I think sometimes it's a bit of a, competition, like who's loudest, who's visible most of the time. So obviously if you're competing on a specific sector, like sometimes your easiest way to win, at least in the short term, is, over communicate a bit more than your competitors. But we have seen that there is optimal point, like at some point, like it just doesn't feel natural. So obviously we want to also put a lot of attention on quality and really making sure that the message you're conveying comes natural, and you're not spoon feeding like too aggressively. And then the other thing is that I have seen that attention span, like it's not necessarily even Web3 problem alone, But we have seen two things on really tactical level is that go into those bite-size education content. And for us, one of the best thing is to do that is basically motion. If you check our Twitter feed, you see that most of the key announcements actually do have a motion design. Like we just see that those have way better conversion and view rates and impressions, and it's easy way to educate users, and it's convenient way to digest the information. So I would just say focus on over communication, but there you need to find the balance. And then secondly, use the motion and see other format of information, how you can put it into bite-sized format. You don't need to educate the whole release of a new product set or features in one go, but do that over time. A bit information here, there, and end of the day, within 1 or 2 weeks, you have educated more than you would have done, with the extensive blog post, which no one is basically reading. And finally, I think it's all about repetition.
I think different types of content is actually, it's a really good point. And we're obviously seeing the rise of short form content now in not just, crypto, but globally, obviously TikTok, Instagram. Like something that we've introduced at the start of this year is literally launching a whole department for it, because we're seeing actually how valuable it is. And as attention spans wane, market share is even harder to gain. So you have to sort of find different ways of attracting people, and people will react to different things. So every single type of content, every type of video style, every platform, you've kind of got to try all of these. I love testing and learning. That's my background is marketing, and that's kind of what marketing is. You test some stuff, you see the data, you work out if it's working or not, and then you go again and you develop it further. I think that's something that a lot of people don't do enough of, and it's actually really easy to do in this space, because honestly, people's memory is like a goldfish. So if you do a campaign and maybe it didn't work that well, or you try some stuff, that's fine. You've learned something. Now try something else. But 2 weeks later, there's a new narrative. You can jump on that and see how that works.
Yeah, there wasn't. This wasn't actually scheduled as part of the conversation, but because you mentioned it and of how important it is, I wanted your take. We'll go to Danny first, and then Sammy, just on that cross-platform marketing strategy and how successful you think that is in Web3, because you're talking about complete different types of content, whether that's on X through written or video, whether that's YouTube through long form, or Instagram Shorts and TikTok on on short form content. What's your view on Web3 projects advertising or creating content on those platforms, and how successful do you think those conversions are comparative to X, where a lot of the mindshare is?
It comes down to we talk in marketing a lot about TAM, right? The total addressable market, and crypto Twitter is a finite circle jerk of amount of people, which yes, like a lot of liquidity is there, and a lot of the marketing is important to do there, and obviously it's a huge part of what we do, but it's not the only people in the world. And actually, I really think over the next 6, 12, 18 months, the projects that really understand that you can move beyond CT and you can actually market to different consumers, different types of audiences, that grows your market addressable, the addressable market you can go after, which gives you more chance at users. And it might be that you think your target market is in CT and these people, actually you find a home in TikTok with short form videos through creators that actually encourages a bunch of people, and you turn into the next Pi network. I mean, the best thing about that is this multi-billion-dollar thing that no one on CT had even heard of. And that's kind of that I think was a lesson to everyone, in that we're all in this very insular world where we only sort of see out what we see, and the timeline is very constructed in the way that we see it. But there is a huge market outside of that, and I think we have to go outside of that.
Yeah, we saw an astronomical number of NFTs sold on Reddit that no one knew about. I don't know if you remember that bear market, which did exceptionally well. They did sunset it since, but it was a lot. And there is this conversation about the types of investors, or the types of people that are going to get involved depending on what product that is. And by that I mean, we saw a lot of people come in this previous cycle through TikTok who were Gen Zs, and meme coins really resonated with them for that fast money. And you saw a whole different almost demographic of people that are coming into the space, which we hadn't seen, and through the likes of Twitch and things like that. Sammy, was there anything that you thought or saw specifically about those cross platforms that you're thinking about? Do you see value, or is
Yeah.
this something where you think it should be a concerted effort in one direction or not?
Yeah, I actually, by the way, agree with Danny and you that we oftentimes hear the operators of Web3, we have the insider bias, like everything needs to be on X. But if you ask your friends, like how many of your friends have X? Now I'm just saying the normie friends. So, not everybody even might be on Twitter. So I have seen that, often we have definitely a user audience, for example, a Trust Wallet. Like sometimes they see the news right away on X, and then they go to the app, like, oh, there's a new feature, let me try it. Then there are definitely those users who, might be finding the information a bit later through our SEO content. We actually double down a lot on SEO, and we have seen that that's actually a critical thing, which we've been consistent for the past 2 years. And that's where we are dominating. Like, type many words related to wallets or crypto, you see Trust Wallet popping on the first of the keywords. And then there are users who simply want to get into crypto or learn about self-custody or opportunities in DeFi. And for those users, we definitely want to cater you to whether are self-generated or working with influencers or KOLs. But obviously, we having our own app, like I don't want to underestimate the impact of having just one app push that we send mostly once a week. That goes really far away. But we also been ramping up, really being present just at the events, like finding operators we want to partner with, finding opportunities, getting insights. So in short, I would just say that you need to be almost everywhere. Like, you can be really scientific and understand your users. Like, okay, for these users we are in these channels, for these users we are here, and these we are here. But practically, like, if you're really targeted and you do many things, you cannot go wrong. And then if you feel like, okay, that doesn't make any sense for us to be here, let's pull back. But at least if you want to be the key operator or the primary operator, you need to be everywhere, basically. Nowadays, I would like to even say that Hype, is in Denver, is, in Token 2049, in key industry events. And if you just try to, look for the best agency, you might find Hype. We will also be the same, like Trust Wallet becoming and emerging in all the points, and you cannot just avoid. I think that's one of the best things, that you have done something right. If the content and channel is there, and if on top of that, if the community is there and they're advocating you must have done something right. If people simply cannot avoid you, that's how I would recap it.
Can I just ask? Interesting, you talked about the SEO side of things. How are you guys thinking about AI optimization? Because obviously, with the rise of GPT and Grok and everything else, we're seeing a lot less search engine, as it were, right? The search engine is now the AI. So how are you guys thinking about that? Is there anything you're doing?
Yeah, we have seen that there has been some algorithms which have been impacted by AI. So we actually have seen that the best impact is still when you actually have a human interaction, like mostly human generated. Like obviously, we do have freelancers and many content creators who use AI as a support there. But we have been actually seeing consistently that when you have a weekly content target and you're consistently deploying, we have seen a good impact. But you need to have a really good CMS, content management system, or blog, where basically you get all of those content indexed in Google. So we can maybe then take it offline, but I'm actually a strong believer that, and when I speak with many, operators, they simply just don't want to do Web2 because it's boring, it's not as cool. And what SEO happens to be sometimes those things that I see that doesn't get the love that it really deserves. I think I've seen a lot of things that some operators have been doing really well. The founder or CEO-led content stuff. You can see many of you would say B2B operators are actually nailing it. LinkedIn. I quite haven't seen that that Web3 operators would have gone actually on that path. But Danny, maybe we need to take offline the whole SEO and also the founder-led marketing.
Yeah, no, we've been talking a lot recently about this concept of maybe it's like LLMO rather than SEO anymore, which is, how do you actually optimize to appear in results of large language models? Because that's the future of search, right? So anyway, as I said, it's for another day, for another topic, but it's really fascinating.
But I agree that there is shift in the industry, but I still see that keywords are playing a role still in the industry. And that's how you actually get your brand out there in the key channels as well. At least how I see it.
Yeah, a fascinating conversation, and like you mentioned there, Danny, almost one we could have a whole another conversation on. So, just as we head into the last 10 minutes of the show, I've got a couple of more questions, and I wanted to ask yourself, Danny, just before we move on to mindshare versus market share, in terms of token incentives and a rise in token incentives to drive adoption, you know, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on, you know, token-driven growth. You know, is it a short-term hack? Is it sustainable? Is there a way it can be done right? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Yeah, it can be done right. I wouldn't say you shouldn't do token-driven growth because we're in a token-driven market.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to some of the stuff we talked at the start, right? Which is just that if your entire marketing plan is, I'm just going to sell people the dream of this token and hope that they buy it and it go up, and I'm just going to keep giving incentives endlessly in the hope that they're going to keep buying into this vision that one day it's going to go up, then of course that's not going to work. That is a short-term hack. So it's kind of the same as before, which is you need a full plan, a full strategy, holistic across the board. But I actually think token incentives are really, really powerful and effective, particularly early on. If you've got a good project or a good idea or whatever it is, then you can use token incentives to really drive adoption early. The problem is, how do you then offboard people from that, right? Because as you said, you're going to attract the wrong kind of people. I think it's a case of, trying to foster enough of a community that comes through that when you pull incentives away, you have all the stuff we talked about. So you've got enough things going on, be it the community, the product, the opportunities, the vision, the stuff, for people to still want to be part of it, not just because token go up. But yeah, token incentives, you can't avoid them. It's really, really tricky. I mean, look, we've seen all this whole airdrop meta over the last 18 months. I mean, a bunch of L2s have basically died, died on their sword of, I'm going to get a bunch of TVL, I'm going to pump an airdrop out, everyone's going to dump it, and now what do I do? And I think that was very short-sighted in hindsight, and a lot of them have learned the lesson. But during that period, everyone was like, "This is amazing. This is so obvious." I think it was Celestia actually, one of the first. Well, it was kind of Jito, wasn't it, with Solana when the Solana thing? I think it was end of 23. The Solana airdrop season kicked off, and then yeah, exactly. And well, then the mobile came, but then Celestia very quickly came and did their thing, and all of a sudden it was like, "Oh my god, this is it. We've solved it. Just give airdrops to people, and then they'll be your best friends, and they'll love you, and they'll shill your project." And in hindsight, that was obviously pretty stupid, but at the time, it seemed like it made a lot of sense. So, yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, again, I think depending on the time of the cycle would have impacted that a lot more. And I don't think people anticipated, the length of the bear market and the lack of speed in which we've seen the upside. So yeah, really, really good points.
Yeah, just my addition on token is that indeed, in previous cycles, like you said, Danny, it was you did good marketing when you did an airdrop, and you did in fair in a way that community found that they got enough. I think that was the success here. Obviously, we have been going quite a long mile since then, and what we believe here is what we are seeing with the projects is those ones who are able to actually crack the code, so to say, that they build a growth flywheels, that they see that a token is something that users feel that they are part of the project, they are owners, and they don't want to liquidate it and sell it right away.
Yeah.
But it's tricky. It's tricky. You need to actually build products when you actually use it, that you actually incentivize the right people. I think the token needs to be there that incentivizes the right behavior. It cannot be only a freebie. It can, in a way, if you want to bring users, but then you need to build those flywheels that are sustainable, because otherwise nobody from the community is benefiting. So we're also building a lot of those things, how to bring the token to the core of the product experience, or potentially even a lot of exclusive perks or benefits, or, to be an early tester of some features, or, completely exclusive. So I think that's the thing. I think this industry fully yet haven't cracked as a whole.
Yeah, it's a really strong point in terms of the engine that's behind driving that, needs to be really strong and needs to be really established. Sammy, let's head over to market share versus mind share in the last couple of minutes, just so as we head into the last 6 minutes. So what would you say is more important, mind share or market share?
Yeah, I think that's probably what we have been speaking here for the whole hour. But I would just say in a way that I think the consensus is here, without going into details or examples, but I believe strongly also that mindshare is basically the gateway to the market share, especially if you're an early project. Let's just say if you're a startup, I would myself actually put efforts on the mindshare, that you are really relevant, you actually stand out. Oftentimes you as a no-name, for example, if you're completely new and you didn't maybe get the traction for multiple reasons, or you don't even have a token necessarily, you need to have the mindshare that users will actually use your product, and that's where you get the market share. And on the other hand, there has been projects who have been really doubling down on the market share. They are like, okay, what's the ROI? Let me do these paid ads. Let me do the airdrop, and then I just get these users. But if you really don't have a strong narrative, you don't have a brand, basically, you don't have a storyline or something, like in this industry, you're basically fading away. So, I mean, like, I would just say, like, you need those two, but if you need to start somewhere, I would say put the market share first. You can also kill yourself basically with market share in a way that if you over-index on it. So for the long-term sustainability, like, I think it's the balancing act of those two. Some months, some weeks, it might be one over the other, but it needs to be some sort of an equilibrium. That's what I'm a strong believer, and that's what we have been doing also at Trust Wallet since for example, this and the past side.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's a really really like solid answer. It's like having the balance between the both, but understanding like the importance and when that importance is relevant within that. Danny, did you have any comments on that? Because I wanted to ask, again, quite a very broad question, but with your experience, what the most effective strategy to increase mind share is. So, first of all, market share versus mind share, and then second of all, what you feel is probably, for someone who's listening, a strategy to increase mind share in Web3.
Yeah, again, it's about defining what the two are, but they're both important. But I agree, particularly if you're in early stage, then mindshare is important. We think about this a lot, right? Our job is, how do we increase mindshare for our clients? That's what most of them come to us for. How do we get more attention and more eyeballs? And I always think about it in like maybe four things that I think really help stand out, right? So you can go like shop, but I think like near, for example, and some of the stuff David over there does, which is kind of shock mindshare. None of this stuff necessarily has long-term gain, as in like keeps people on, but it creates noise in mindshare. So I think you can go shock. I think you can go FOMO. It's like a mega ETH, right? When the Echo thing's sold out, everyone's got FOMO. Oh, what is this thing? I think you can go really high IQ, and you can really dive into like the intelligentsia of crypto. That's really important because I think if you get them on side, that basically solves a lot of your problems. And it can be really simple things, but it's high IQ. So like, I don't know, the wormhole video last year, if you remember, where they did the video of the guy and ETH coming in, it's stuff like that that's really high IQ, but kind of still simple enough that everyone loves it and gets it. That's how you can create immediate impact, immediate mind share. And I think the last one, I would say, is intentional trolling. I think is probably an underrated tactic for creating mindshare. I think if you look around the space and look at how sometimes people have become top of the leaderboard, or have become known, or projects are a bit more, it's typically because they're having an argument with someone, or they're trolling or something. So a lot of people are scared to do that, but actually it can be really powerful if done right. And I even know some people that manufacture this stuff. So yeah, I think there's different ways of growing mindshare. It's just, how do I get eyeballs? How do I get attention? And it does heavily matter what is going on in the market. So if everyone is talking about AI, then cool, how do I jump on AI and make my thing with, everyone's talking about RWAs and Trump. Cool. How do I make my thing all about that? And now how do I use one of these? Do I shock people? Do I create FOMO? Do I go with some high IQ thing?
I like, Danny, your comment about, how can you stand out? I think there's many companies who really have, cracked the identity. Like, you really stand out by doing something unconventional or something unique. I think that goes really, really a long mile around. I think one thing I want to say here is, though, that oftentimes a marketer, like, many people over-index on maybe the growth side, or you could say the market share, because that's easy to be quantified. Like it's easy to communicate internally, it's easy to share to the community. The mindshare part, like recently we have luckily a lot of good tools that you can actually check the token or your share of voice. I think that's been helping a lot. But still, it's a bit more vague. So it's more like, trust the process. We do these things, and I guarantee you that in 1 year we have tripled, the impact. But then also in Web3, you don't always have the attribution from mindshare activities to to actual users or wallets. So I think that's the thing that you need to be really be creative in your organization, whoever you need to influence, your core team or the community. But that might be one thing what I think that many people might be over indexing growth over the mindshare, because it's as easy as to justify.
Yeah, some really strong points. And I realize we have just come up on time. So I wanted to say a massive thank you to you both. Was there any closing comments that either of you guys had, just in terms of the whole conversation? We've spoken about sticky users, growth tactics, the market and navigating within that, understanding the importance of a community and that growth, and obviously mindshare and market share. Danny, was there any closing comments that you had before we wrap up?
Well, I probably only use a term that Ekram, who couldn't be here, often coins, which is like position or be positioned. I think all of this stuff we're talking about, it starts at the beginning with your positioning and your vision and how you're going to sell this thing and how you become relevant and how you are differentiated from everyone else. If you nail that bit, everything else becomes so much easier. But most people start somewhere in the middle, and then they can't understand why things aren't working, or they get lost or confused, or the message gets confused. You have to start at the beginning. It sounds ridiculous, but you have to. And if you get that bit right, everything else is a lot easier. So that's what I would say for anyone in marketing, founders, projects that are thinking about this. Think about your why, think about the how and the what and all that stuff. And if you haven't got that absolutely nailed, written on a piece of paper, on the wall, everyone in the company knows it, then you should probably think about doing that, because it's going to help everything else.
Yeah, really great. I agree with that. Sammy, over to you just before we wrap up.
Yeah, so my last comment here is that, everything we've been discussing here doesn't really matter unless you will execute on it. So, and I think the key is the people. So we need the right people. I see in Web3 that you actually, and for example, when we are hiring marketing people at Trust Wallet, I always prioritize, mindset over the skill set. You can learn all of these things that we have been discussing, for example, on this thing, and you need to be passionate, you need to be hungry, and you need to be eager to put in the work, because Web3 can be hard. And then once you go through the process, you learn about branding, you know about growth, what's tactics, what channels, how to operate in community. And I would like to finally say that whatever we discussed here, like we need the strong people, and maybe this is the right position or place to put a bit of an insert that we have multiple marketing roles open. So go to trustwallet.com/careers and check if there's any opportunities that you would like to jump in and help us, take us to the next level, whether it is brand or growth or both of those. We just need, passionate people who are willing to put in the hard work.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time for both jumping in. It's been a fascinating conversation, one I've really enjoyed. And in line with our objective here at Trust Talks, to just have really, really cool conversations with amazing people that are driving the industry and the space forward. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, especially the Trust Wallet family who tune in week on week and join us over here at Trust Talks. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll see you guys on the next show. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Pav. Thanks, Sammy.